wonder how they're going to feel after the bar exam, or they walk out of the bar exam not feeling good. They'll feel anxious about their results. They're worried about what they didn't know. They get more worried when they compare what they wrote with what their friends wrote because they didn't write the same things. So we just want to express that that's very normal, okay? It happens every administration. It does not mean that you failed. Oftentimes, students who are the most anxious pass with the highest scores. And in fact, it can be a good sign if you're anxious about the bar exam after it's over, because it tells me that you've actually spotted some of the trickier issues. You've noticed some of the harder areas of law that some other people might have missed. So it can actually be a good thing if you're anxious. Feelings typically do not correlate with bar exam results. So we've had some students that are just completely confident that they passed, 100% they walk out of there, not even worried about results being released. And some of them do pass, but they pass with, they're just overpassing. It's not like they pass with flying colors. And then we've had students who have been so anxious about results, constantly talking about what they wrote and, worrying about results, and they end up passing with flying colors, sometimes in the 90th percentile or above. So feelings typically do not correlate with results. You might wonder why you're feeling like this after the bar exam. Maybe you didn't feel like this after law school exams and that concerns you. And there's a few differences to keep in mind. First of all, the bar exam is really hard and you don't need a high score to pass. In law school, maybe you are aiming for an A or a B. For the bar exam, for basically every state, you need between a 60 and a 68% to pass the bar exam. So you need like a solid D to pass the bar exam. So, you're not aiming for the A or the B. You don't need that to pass the bar exam. And by the way, very few people actually care about your bar exam score. People aren't typically, maybe right when the bar exam's over, they'll ask you, but it's not like anybody that hires you in the future will ask you what your bar exam score is or even know what it means. So really, you just have to get that passing score and you're good. You'll be admitted to the practice of law, hopefully. Another reason that you might be anxious is because after an exam, people tend to focus on what they didn't know, not what they did know. I had a student tell me once that on the MBE, there were no negligence questions and there were 10 mortgage questions. And by the NCBE's own rules, there have to be 12 to 13 negligence questions. So the student just didn't remember them because negligence was easy for her. And she remembered all the mortgage questions because she had a harder time with mortgages. And in fact, she probably inflated the number of mortgage questions unless there truly were a bunch of test questions on mortgages on her exam, which who knows, maybe there was. But people tend to remember what they didn't know after the exam, and they tend to not focus on what they did know. So you might forget about how much you actually did know during the exam, and you're focusing a lot on what you didn't know. And then lastly, people talk about the exam afterwards, and we've had, so many groups of people just talking about questions, and they all, they agree on, we should have talked about the 14th Amendment, or we should have talked about this. And a whole group of students believe that after they all got together and talked about it. But yet when the examiner's analysis comes out, the 14th Amendment is nowhere in the examiner's analyses. So a lot of times students will get themselves riled up about what they talked about, or, convince themselves they should have said this, when in reality, they shouldn't have. And also, if everybody's really having trouble with certain questions, typically those questions are graded easier because the examiner, realizes everyone's having trouble with them. So even just subconsciously, they're graded a little bit easier than questions that are more standard in terms of their level of difficulty. So if you're feeling anxious about the exam or sad or whatever, don't worry about it. It does not mean you failed. Just wait till results come out. Try to forget about it and not talk about it, not talk about the actual substance of the exam with your friends, because that's probably not doing anyone any good. And remember that there might be a lot of reasons that you feel anxious or you don't feel good about it, but it does not mean that you didn't pass the exam. We've had so many students pass the exam, even if they walk out, not feeling great about their performance. And oftentimes they pass with well over the score that they actually need to pass the exam. So hopefully that helps ease any anxiety you might have about the bar exam.